We have a lot of news to cover in today's video, including the latest offseason trade talk around teams like Nashville, Vancouver, and Ottawa. Plus, we have updates on some roster moves heading into the first night of the 23 Stanley Cup playoffs. We have some news on some signings. We also have some more news on the fallout in Calgary after it was announced that Brad Treliving would not be returning as GM. We now know a little bit more to the story. Plus, we have a big update as well from Kevin Weeks regarding potential arena in Atlanta that could possibly mean a future team down the road. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today, including some news on the Stanley Cup playoffs, which begin by the time this makes it to YouTube. The first game of the Stanley Cup playoffs likely will be underway, but when it comes to the Boston Bruins, certainly not a good time. Like, there's never really a good time per se, but they do have a bit of a virus, flu bug or some sort going through the dressing room. It's uncertain tonight. Guys like Patrice Bergeron and Linus Ullmark may not be able to play. They have been under the weather, and they're not quite clear if they're going to be good to go or not. So they're classified as game time decisions. There are some other players that have been sick as well, but we don't know the full details on that. We do know that David Krejci is feeling better and will be good to go for tonight's action. So some good news, but mostly concerning news in Boston, but they've been dealing with adversity all year. I would like to think they'll find a way to battle through that. Now, on to some other news for Stanley Cup playoffs tonight. Cale Makar for the Avalanche is going to be back and good to go for Game 1, as is Mark Stone for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, Vegas won't get underway until tomorrow night, but he's been on long-term injury reserve for quite a long time. And yes, he's ready to go. They activated him today. Will be in the lineup for Game 1, confirmed by head coach Bruce Cassidy. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that talk about that and find ways to complain, considering how convenient it is that he's ready on day 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs when he's been out of action for quite some time. Same sort of scenario that we saw with Nikita Kucherov in Tampa a couple of years back. Obviously, it's not really a loophole, but it's a totally legal in the CBA within the cap to be able to use LTIR. As much as some people may not like it, it's technically not wrong with what they're doing. At some point, if teams don't like it, they're going to have to get together and find a way to change the rules. But Mark Stone will be in action for Vegas when they kick off their series against the Winnipeg Jets. Some signings today in Nashville. Both of them involve players on new one-year extensions, both for $775,000. So both league minimum. I believe they're both two-way deals as well. But they've signed Kiefer Sherwood and Michael McCarron. So they both get re-upped for one more year. Now, we also saw some additional changes in Washington. We know that it was already announced that Peter Laviolette, the former head coach of the Capitals, would not be returning, that he and the Capitals mutually agreed to part ways. There will be additional changes to the Caps coaching team. Obviously, McCarthy and Forsyth both will not return either. So it looks like they're going to be getting a bigger overhaul on that coaching staff. And of course, earlier today, there was a dedicated video on the channel. So if you want a full, more detail, more breakdown, Brad Treliving has been confirmed to not be returning as GM of the Calgary Flames. Now, since that was earlier announced and that video was produced, the Flames have had a press conference, which involved obviously new president and interim GM Don Maloney. And we've also had more reporting come out from Elliot Friedman in his 32 Thoughts column, which kind of gives a little bit more of a behind-the-scenes look at kind of what transpired, what went down. Now, as far as potential, guys that could be taking the role of GM, there's some speculation on a variety of names out there, but one internal candidate that's expected to get a good consideration would be Craig Conroy. He's been a long-time assistant general manager, and there was some talk that maybe he would bring back his former line mate, longtime Calgary Flame, greatest Flame of all time, Jerome Gillen, to work in some capacity within the management team as well. No guarantee, of course, on it happens, but I would suspect that Conroy is at least seriously considered. But there more likely will be other names at play as well. Obviously, for right now, like I said, Don Maloney is the interim GM. He's also president. He's a former general manager of the NHL on multiple occasions with different franchises with the Coyotes and the Islanders. He's been with the Flames for a long time in different roles. Was previously an executive vice president. He and Brad Treliving worked together both in Arizona and in Calgary. He said in his press conference he always kind of seen themselves as more partners than they were, like not really concerned too much about titles per se. I know he and many Flames on staff are pretty, upset and sad to see Treliving go. He's a very well-respected man, a good person that everybody seems to like from that perspective. So, it's tough when you work with somebody for a long time. They have a good, strong relationship. enjoy working with them and your friends. Well, that's, it's a tough time. So Maloney, as much as he's getting an opportunity and a promotion, it's, not the most happy about it. He also went on to say as well that, they're certainly going to be overhauling and reviewing everything. He was asked about head coach Daryl Sutter if he would be returning, and all Maloney would say is that he's going to be reviewing everything to do with hockey operations and kind of making decisions as time goes on. He's obviously just getting started. But as far as why Treliving decided not to return, I know there was some talk earlier in the year. The Flames were offering an extension to him, didn't take it, decided to kind of wait and see how things played out. And this seems to be more of his choice. This is his choosing. This is not a case of Calgary firing him. This is not a case of Calgary saying we're not going to re-sign you. This is a case of Brad Treliving deciding that he didn't want to accept the extension and he did not want to be the GM of the Calgary Flames any longer. Brad Treliving said it's been there a long time. 5 years out of 10 they were in the playoffs, which is mediocre. But we know last offseason he had a lot to deal with and certainly made some significant moves. Unfortunately, this roster underperformed and things didn't really turn out the way they were hoping for. But the big reason, according to Elliot Friedman in his blog just doing a couple hours ago, indicates that basically he didn't want to work with Daryl Sutter anymore. I don't think the two were seeing eye to eye. He said that they were having a lot of issues with their relationship. We know Daryl Sutter can be really tough to work with when you're a player, and obviously that's the case as well when you can be his boss as the manager. Of course, ownership had offered extensions to both Sutter and Treliving at the beginning of the season, and Sutter took his, Treliving didn't. So obviously he was not really in a position where ownership was likely going to let him remove the coach. So he decided if he can't change the coach and he's going to be here, I'm not going to be here. It's just that simple. We know that Sutter's had, like I said, he's had a tough season and he's done a lot of things that have kind of rubbed people the wrong way. He's certainly, very much headstrong and set in his ways. That's fair to say about Daryl Sutter. He's not going to change for anybody. And it can be challenging. So we'll see what happens. Right now it's expected that he will be returning as the head coach, but now we kind of know a little bit more about behind the scenes here that those two were not working well together. Treliving wasn't happy with how he was going about things and decided that he couldn't work with them any longer. So where he had a contract and Brad didn't, he decided it was time for him to move on. So we'll have to see what happens. It's likely going to be expected here that he's going to get opportunities if he wants them elsewhere. We don't know what he wants to do. Obviously, this is all still fresh and just happened. But obviously, there's openings for a president in Philadelphia. There's openings for a GM role in Pittsburgh. There could be other things open up here as well. And he'll certainly skyrocket to the, near the top of a lot of those lists for at least for those teams to talk to for sure to see what other additional opportunities. But now we know a little bit more on the story there. So I'll be curious to see what happens in Calgary. As I mentioned, some players like Elias Lindholm, Mikael Backlund seem to be real sketchy on talking about extensions or re-signing. They were not happy with how things went. There was also some comments in the blog from Friedman talking about how they had a bit of a divided locker room and kind of different factions within the room, which is certainly not good. So it can be difficult to get everybody on the same page in that respect. And sounds like they have some work to do there in Calgary when it comes to the culture, getting the whole team on the same page. And a lot of it, I think, does have to do with the coach. So we'll see where things go on that front, but certainly some more information there. Now, when it comes to Nashville, of course, we know Barry Trotz is taking over. Of course, David Poile will remain as an advisor for a period of time, but Trotz will be getting underway as the new general manager. Based on recent reports from Nashville media, it certainly sounds like Barry Trotz is certainly open to making a few changes to the team. It's expected that based on what they were already looking to do, is what David Poile was working on previously, that the team is likely going to be exploring at least one more significant trade sometime in the offseason, likely by the draft. It's expected that perhaps even a guy like Matt Duchene, who has a fair bit of term and money left, could be a guy that they consider shopping. Obviously, he's been an up and down kind of player since he's been there, since he signed that long-term deal. Obviously, some like last year was better, but this past year, the first season, not quite as productive. Obviously, at this point, it's somebody that they can work with if they have to, but if they can find an opportunity to get that cap flexibility, may not be a bad thing at all. So I do suspect Barry Trotz to kind of make a few more changes for sure. And, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of some of these players that might get moved. I don't expect like wholesale changes, but there's definitely going to be a bit of a retooling for sure going on there. Be curious to see where things go. Now, as we also mentioned, Kevin Weeks has been reporting on this for some time. We talked about NHL expansion a few weeks ago. Now there's a report from Kevin Weeks saying that there's an announcement coming that's going to basically confirm that a new arena is going to be being built in the Atlanta area. It's kind of, he says that the city or the potential ownership group there that would like to have an NHL team is taking more of the build it and they will come type of approach. Of course, it wasn't that long ago that Kevin Weeks and writers from ESPN were talking about some different cities that could be hosting NHL teams in the near future. And they talked a bit about, obviously, Salt Lake City was mentioned, Atlanta was mentioned, Kansas City was mentioned. Like, there's different ones, and even Houston as well. So, like, the whole Atlanta thing, though, has kind of caught a lot of people off guard, considering they've already had teams twice in the past, and they both failed. I will recognize that they both failed because of poor ownership situations. More than anything, it's not that there isn't hockey fans in the area, and it is possible in the right situation that hockey might be able to thrive in Atlanta. We know Atlanta is a huge market in the States, and, could be a big money-making opportunity for the NHL if they can get a team to be successful there. But I will caution this, just because they're making plans to build an arena, I don't think that confirms anything. Take a look at Quebec City. Quebec City's had a brand new arena for quite some time now, several years. And they took the build it and they will come approach, trying to lure the NHL back to give them a franchise. And they're still waiting all this time later. So I don't think that that's really any kind of confirmation at all that they will get a team. But it's interesting to see what kind of approach that they are taking there and see if anything will come from it down the road. Now, as far as the Vancouver Canucks goes, Elliotte Friedman also talks about the fact that he believes that the Vancouver Canucks and the Tampa Bay Lightning very well might make some great trade partners this offseason. One type of player that he feels the Canucks are going to be looking for would be some help at center ice, likely in that middle six kind of role. And he mentions Ross Colton of the Tampa Bay Lightning being a prime target that they might be interested in, and a player that Tampa Bay is likely going to struggle to re-sign due to their cap situation. Of course, that's assuming we only get the $1 million cap increase. A lot of teams are going to be very tight up against it. Tampa's been tight up against it for quite a while, and Colton might be the next cap casualty that they've end up having. Obviously, a guy like Alex Killorn comes to mind as well. A guy that's been there his entire career, has had a real solid run in Tampa, but it's on an expiring deal. I'm not really sure how they're going to be able to make things work to keep him in the loop. Same goes for Colton. They could very well be the next ones to be shipped out of town, and obviously Vancouver would make a lot of sense for his services. I'm not sure what kind of offer they would make in between. Obviously, the Lightning, if they trade Colton, are likely going to be looking for something more futures-based, would be my guess, or a prospect that might be ready to play now or in the very near future. Another name to watch as well for Vancouver when it comes to free agency might be Ivan Barbashev, who may or may not stay in Vegas after being acquired at the trade deadline. If he does indeed head free agency, certainly expect him to be getting some interest from the Canucks. Now, when it comes to the Ottawa Senators, GM Pierre Dorion had his media availability at the end of the season for today, and made a lot of comments that were very interesting to think about. For starters, we know that Cam Talbot won't be back now. He confirmed that. He says that they did discuss a contract extension with them. They were only willing to go 1 year. Talbot insisted on a multi-year deal, so that wasn't working out. And he said they're also very far apart on the money side of it as well. So no dice, and it's not going to be happening. Talbot will be exploring free agency. He said Austin Watson's a possibility to be back, but odds are against it. He said Watson, of course, because of his age, is looking for a multi-year deal. Probably the last time he's going to cash in, and is something that the Senators probably wouldn't want to do. They would be maybe more comfortable with a 1 year contract, but if he's able to get that 2 year deal elsewhere, he could probably move on. He said the door is still kind of open as well, possibly for Travis Hamonic to possibly return on a 1 year contract too, but that's more than what he's willing to accept for money as well. Now, a big topic, of course, was Alex DeBrincat has been fussed about here really ever since the players of their end of season media availability. Bruce Garriock put out a report saying that he didn't think DeBrincat would want to stay and re-sign, and it kind of just had a whole spin-off of rumors around him and getting traded and what this future holds and all that kind of stuff. And we got a little more clarity on that here today. For starters, DeBrincat never ever said he wanted, that he didn't want to sign or anything. And what his comments were is that he was open to anything, but the fact that he didn't say with a huge smile and lots of enthusiasm is got all the media talking about, oh yeah, he doesn't want to stay. It's like, if you've ever listened to an Alex DeBrincat interview, That's just his demeanor to me. I don't think it really means anything. And according to Pierre Dorion, he said that at the end of the year that he had a great, long, productive chat with DeBrincat, and that the biggest thing that they wanted to wait between him and his agent was just to see how the new ownership situation plays out. And I totally understand and don't blame them at all. You know the team's for sale. You know it's changing ownership. You know it's imminent. It's coming here very soon. And you want to wait and see who that is and what kind of direction they want to take this team before you agree to stay for 7 or 8 years. Does that not make sense? I think it does. So I think a lot of the negativity around him wanting out is just complete hogwash, in my opinion. But not to say that he's going to stay for sure. I just think he's very premature to say that he's not going to. And we'll have to wait and see where things go on that front. I mean, when it comes to Pierre Dorion himself, he, of course, talked about the fact that he has to wait and see from ownership if he's going to even be remaining in his role. Obviously, when their ownership changes, they could change anything they want, including coach or GM. One thing that I found very interesting as well is it's the first time, because he was asked about Coach DJ Smith, and he said, so assuming you are back as GM, does that automatically mean that DJ is back as well as coach? And he had an opportunity, a prime opportunity to give him a big vote of confidence, and he didn't do it. All he went on to say that DJ's always done everything he's asked. He's done a good job, but he said everything would be under consideration. And he's not, at this point, it didn't really seem clear what he was going to recommend to the new ownership. So I don't know that we can really say for certainty that Dorion wouldn't mind moving on from DJ if he is back. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But I know Frank Zaravelli had put out information on one of his latest podcasts saying that he said 90% chance that Dorion wasn't back as GM is his opinion. I don't really see how that's likely. I mean, at this point, Dorion's been leading this team, and you can tell that ever since the strings were cut, basically after Eugene Melnyk passed away, and he had a little bit more freedom about how to run about his business, that he's done a fantastic job, in my opinion. Yes, not every GM is going to get every move just perfect. But like you said, they don't really have a lot of bad contracts. Yes, they made a few boo-boos, but they're trying to make up for it. It's not like they have a lot of dead bad money tied up on their cap. They have a great young core signed for long term. I don't really see why new ownership would automatically want to get rid of them. I think they'd give them some time and see how things play out before they make a change. But that's just me. We'll have to wait and see. Speaking of which, the NHL certainly needs to move the sale process along. They have a lot of business they need to take care of, and a lot of it's held up because of the fact that that sale is not complete. They don't know who the owners are going to be here just yet. So hopefully there's some clarity on that soon so they can go about getting their business taken care of. So that's all your news for today. Let me know your thoughts on everything down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around, and we'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.